Om Shri Sai Ram. We welcome you all again to a blissful session, one of our offerings to Bhagwan Madhurashtakam. We start with our prayers. Sai Ram.
सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः।
అధిరం మధురం వదనం మధురం నయనం మధురం హసితం మధురం అధిరం మధురం వదనం మధురం నయనం మధురం హసితం మధురం అధరం మధురం వదనం మధురం నయనం మధురం హసితం మధురం అధరం మధురం వదనం మధురం నయనం మధురం హసితం మధురం అధరం మధురం వదనం మధురం నయనం మధురం హసితం మధురం హృదయం మధురం గమనం మధురం మధురాధిపతేరఖిలం మధురం వచనం మధురం చరితం మధురం వసనం మధురం ఫలితం మధురం వచనం మధురం చరితం మధురం వసనం మధురం ఫలితం మధురం వచనం మధురం చరితం మధురం వసనం మధురం ఫలితం మధురం చరితం మధురం ప్రమితం మధురం మధురాధిపతేరఖిలం మధురం మధురాధిపతేరఖిలం మధురం నృత్యం మధురం సఖ్యం మధురం మధురాధిపతేరఖిలం మధురం గీతం మధురం గీతం మధురం ఉత్తం మధురం సుప్తం మధురం గీతం మధురం గీతం మధురం ఉత్తం మధురం సుప్తం మధురం గీతం మధురం గీతం మధురం ఉత్తం మధురం సుప్తం మధురం రూపం మధురం తిలకం మధురం మధురాధిపతేరఖిలం निर्मधुरं कलितं मधुरं फलितं मधुरं मधुराधिपतेरखिलं मधुरम्
Om Shri Sai Ram. Shri Krishna Sharanamama. Pranams to the lotus feet of our Bhaktavatsala Bhagwan Baba and Madhuradhipate Shri Krishna. We welcome you all to this blissful session of Madhurashtakam. Shri Satyasai Seva organization was founded in the year 1960 by Bhagwan Shri Satyasai Baba to enable its members to undertake service activities as a means to spiritual advancement. Today, we all are here for an explanation on the sweetness-filled Madhurashtakam by Kumari Kanakavalli Santanam. She is recently awarded the Sri Shanmughananda Bharat Ratna Dr. M.S. Subbulakshmi Fellowship in Music for the year 2019 under the category of musicology. She is a BA in Sanskrit from University of Mumbai and also MA in Sanskrit from University of Mumbai. Recipient of Srimati Prematattu Gold Medal for standing first in Vedanta. Completed her PG diploma in comparative mythology from Department of Sanskrit, University of Mumbai. She also holds diploma in Carnatic Vocal Classical from Sri Shanmughananda Bharatiya Sangeet Mahavidyalaya, affiliated with University of Mumbai. She has also completed her master's in music degree from Madras University. She is associated with www.dharmawiki.org as a research assistant. She is also visiting faculty at Department of Sanskrit at University of Mumbai. She was initiated into Carnatic classical music vocal by her mother Srimati Radha Santanam, later joined Sri Shanmughananda Fine Arts and Sangeeta Sabha. We also have her parents along with her today in this session. And I hand over the session to our sister Kanakavalli Santanam. Sai Ram.
Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. My humble pranams at the lotus feet of Bhagwan Baba. I thank Swami for choosing me today as his medium for his work. I also thank the entire team of Anugraham for giving me an opportunity to share my humble readings with an august audience today. Today, we will be looking at Madhurashtakam by Sri Vallabhacharya. Madhurashtakam is a stotra. The word stotra comes from the root word in Sanskritam, stu. It is said, stuyate anena iti stotram. That which is used as a medium for the praise of the Lord is called as stotra. Naturally, stotras are spontaneous outpourings. They are not sat down. I mean, the acharyas have not sat and thought and, composed it letter by letter. It is a spontaneous outpouring from the acharya's mouth when they are experiencing Shri Krishna. Are the slides visible? Can one of the moderators please confirm?
Yeah, the slide is visible. Can you do the slideshow screen, please?
Yeah, I'll just do that. Is it fine now?
Yes, Saira.
Thank you, Bhaiya. Sairam, thank you, Bhaiya. So, now the choice of the deity, the vocabulary that is used in the stotra, the bhavartha that comes across to us through the stotra, they are all a reflection of the Acharya's thoughts and teachings. Therefore, when we want to understand a stotra and its inner meaning, it is very important to understand the life and the works of the Acharya, his philosophy, their sampradaya and teachings. Therefore, today, before we dive into the Madhurashtakam, we will be looking in brief the life and works of Sri Vallabhacharya. Sri Vallabhacharya was a Vaishnava Bhakti Acharya. Now, Vaishnava Bhakti Acharya, for the simple reason that for Vallabhacharya, the ultimate reality, he saw the ultimate reality in the form of Purushottama Shri Krishna. And the sampradaya that he founded was known as Pushti Marga. Now, Sri Vallabhacharya belonged to a Telugu Vaishnava family from Kakarwad. His father's name was Lakshmana Bhatta and his mother's name was Yellamma Garu. Now, Lakshmana Bhatta and Yellamma Garu from the Telugu Desam migrated to Benares because Benares was the most thriving place for panditas and for people seeking knowledge. However, later on, when Benares was kind of disturbed due to invasions, once they had to flee from Benares to their own Telugu Desa. And while on the journey from Benares to Telugu Desa is when they were passing through the Champaranya, which is today's modern Raipur, Sri Vallabhacharya was born. In the Sampradaya of the Pushti Marga, there is a story that Sri Vallabhacharya was still born and was miraculously revived by the blessings of Lord Sri Krishna. It is also said that the ancestors of Vallabhacharya were Somayajis, the priests who used to perform Soma Yajnas, one of the most important and elaborate yajnas of the Vedic times. And his ancestors were blessed, saying, when your family, when your Kula completes 100 Soma Yajnas, I will myself be born in your family. So in the Sampradaya of the Pushti Margis, it is believed and it is trusted that Vallabhacharya was an Amshavatara or was Lord Sri Krishna born. Because by the time of Lakshmana Bhatta, the 100 Soma Yajnas had been completed, and that's how Vallabhacharya was born. Sri Vallabhacharya began his education at the age of 7 under Sri Vishnu Chitta. And within mere 4 years, he mastered the Vedas, the Vedangas, the Shad Darshanas, the Bhagavad Gita, the Pancharatra Agamas, all the Shastras within a mere 4 years. Why do I say a mere 4 years is because in a Gurukula Vasam, when in those days, the kids after Upanayanam used to go to the Guru, they would be in the Gurukulam for a minimum of 12 years. It would take them 12 years to even learn one shakha of the Veda and its related Shastras. However, Vallabhacharya mastered all these Shastras in a mere time of 4 years. And this is nothing but the gift of his Purva Janma Samskaras and the blessings of Sri Krishna. However, as he completed his education, he lost his father. At that time, he migrated with his mother to his own village. After migrating to his own village, he then took a pilgrimage of the whole of Bharata thrice on foot. We are all aware of how Shankaracharya had traveled the length and breadth of India thrice on his foot in a mere life of 32 years. Vallabhacharya also has traveled the length and breadth of Bharata thrice on his foot. All the Acharyas, one common feature in their life story is the pilgrimages that they undertook. It is very important to understand their nature of pilgrimage and the incidents that took place during the pilgrimage, because that is what shaped their philosophy, their learning, their understanding, and reflects their understanding of the ultimate reality. Now, the first pilgrimage of Sri Vallabhacharya lasted for almost 9 years. Beginning from his village, he first went to Vijayanagara. From Vijayanagara in the south, the places that he traveled were Pampa, Rishyamukha, Kumarapada, Srishaila, Tirupati, Kanchipuram, Kumbakonam, Mannargudi, Srirangam, Madurai, Tenkasi, Rameshwaram, Srivaikundam, Alvar Tirunagari, Tiruvananthapuram, Janardanam, Udupi, Srirangapattinam, Gokarnam, and Kaundinyashrama, and he came back to Vijayanagara. After finishing his tour of the south, he then went west towards Pandharipura, Nashik, Triambakeshwaram, etc. Then proceeded north to Mathura, Kurukshetra, Haridwar, Rishikesh, Gangotri, and Kedar, Prayag, Gaya, and Kashi, moving towards the east, towards the Ganga Sagara, Jagannathapuri, and then coming back to the village of Agrahara, where his mother was residing. Now, this pilgrimage was a very important incident in the life of Vallabhacharya, because the first pilgrimage that every Acharya takes in his life is with the goal of finding a guru, with the goal of finding the purpose of his life. At the age of 11, he had already mastered textual knowledge. He had got the knowledge of all the Shastras. All the Shastras were mukhodgata for him. However, we always have to move beyond the books when we have to experience the ultimate reality. So, Vallabhacharya started his Padayatra at the age of 11. Now, in this first pilgrimage that he took, 3 places were extremely experiential for him. First one was Vijayanagara, the second one was Kaundinyashrama, and the third one was Mathura. Now, what happened in Vijayanagara that was so experiential? Now, when he went to Vijayanagara and stayed there for a while, at this point in time, we should also take into account the time when Vallabhacharya existed. So it was in the 14th, 15th century, 1479 to 1532 was the time that Vallabhacharya existed. Now this time is after the other major acharyas like Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, and Madhvacharya. Therefore, the philosophies of Shankara Advaita, Ramanuja's Vishishta Advaita, and Madhva's Dvaita were already prevalent. Their sampradayas like Sri Sampradaya and Dvaita Sampradayas were already existent. So, the first motive of Vallabhacharya was to travel to these places, firstly to experience the experiences of Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya by visiting the places that the Purvacharyas had visited. And secondly, to understand their Sampradaya and their Shastra firsthand. Only when you have a Purva Paksha can you then establish your own Sampradaya with your Uttara Paksha, with your own understanding of the Shastras. So when the first place that he went was Vijayanagara, which was a seat of Dvaita philosophy or the Madhva Sampradaya. It was during Vallabhacharya's time, after a few years, that Krishna Devaraya had assumed rule there. At that time, so they had this Sabha where the Shankara Advaitins and the Madhva Dvaitins were debating on their philosophy to establish which is a better understanding of the ultimate reality. Obviously, not to put each other down, but to find the best paths to reach or understand the ultimate reality. Now, during this Sabha, Vidvat Sabha, the discussion went on and on and on without any end. At that point in time, even though Vallabhacharya was just 12 years old, he was pulled into the debate. And to everybody's surprise, he managed to convince both the Advaitins and the Madhva Sampradaya people, and the Sabha came to an end. In recognition of this knowledge of Vallabhacharya, Krishna Devaraya then did a Kanakabhishekam to Vallabhacharya and conferred him with the title of an Acharya. Now, this incident is important because the title of an Acharya is conferred upon a scholar when he writes a bhashya or a commentary on the Prasthanatrayi or the three important texts in Vedanta, which is the Brahma Sutras, the Upanishads, and the Bhagavad Gita. Now here, at the age of 12, Vallabhacharya got conferred with the title of an Acharya before even he began his journey of writing a commentary on these great texts. So in this pilgrimage, he developed an understanding of the philosophies of the Vishnu Swamins, who are the Rudra Sampradayis, and Madhvacharya. And it was at this point in time that he was introduced to the Bhagavata Purana, which played a major role in his Sampradaya by the Dvaita philosopher Madhavendra Yati, who came from the Madhva Sampradaya. Now, another important incident that happened was in Kaundinyashrama. Now, Kaundinyashrama was a place where Rishi Kaundinya is supposed to have given enlightenment to Vishnu Swami, who was the propagator or founder of the Rudra Sampradaya. Now, in the Rudra Sampradaya, it is said that Rudra gives the knowledge of Purushottama Krishna to his followers, thereby making Rudra a Parama Vaishnava. So that is a basic understanding of the Rudra Sampradayas. Now, at this very place, the same Rishi Kaundinya is supposed to have appeared to Vallabhacharya, and he gave him the history of the Bhakti Parampara in the Rudra Sampradaya to Vallabhacharya. He told him how Lalita Devi had initiated Shandilya Rishi, who was the guru of Rishi Kaundinya, into the path of Bhakti or the Bhakti Marga of Sri Purushottama Krishna being the ultimate reality, the concept of Bhagavat Leela and the concept of Dasyatvam. All this was then reflected in the Shandilya Bhakti Sutras, was given to Vallabhacharya directly by Rishi Kaundinya. Now, after that, a third incident that was very experiential for Vallabhacharya is when he reached Mathura, because it was in Mathura that he received his first call to establish his own Sampradaya or the Pushti Marga. So at the age of 11, he learned all the Shastras. Then he began his journey on foot in order to understand the Sampradayas and Shastra that was existing in his times. While doing so, he got introduced to the Bhagavata Purana, he got introduced to the Bhakti Sampradaya and the Parampara, the concept of Leela and Dasyatva, and then when he reached Mathura, he felt that he was ready to establish his own Sampradaya and got the first call from Lord Sri Krishna. Now, coming back to where he was, so finally finishing the first pilgrimage, he attained the place of Agrahara, where his mother was stationed. Now, in the second pilgrimage, he stayed with his mother for a year and then began his second pilgrimage, going through Vijayanagara, Pandharipura, Gujarat, Vraj, again the Himalayan pilgrim centers, including Badrinath, and then came to Banaras. Now, this second pilgrimage, he got two experiential experiences, one in Pandharipura and the second in Banaras. When he reached Pandharipura, he saw Vithala and Rakumai as a pair, and he got a divine command that he should enter the Grihastha-ashrama, that he should marry and take to Grihastha-ashrama. Now, this is very significant because all the other acharyas, whether Shankaracharya or the Bhakti acharyas, take to sannyasa before establishing their sampradaya. Now, in the Vallabha sampradaya, Vallabhacharya himself was a Grihastha-ashrami until the very end of his life when he took sannyasa. And to his surprise, in the same second pilgrimage, he finally reached Banaras. A Brahmana named Devadatta offered his daughter Mahalakshmi in marriage to him. And the marriage took place under the consent of his mother in 1500. And then were born two sons, Gokulanatha and Vitthalanatha. Now, the three pilgrimages that he took are also replica of his evolution in the Varnashrama system. While he was taking the first pilgrimage, he was a brahmachari. Brahmachari, not in the sense of a person who is not married. Brahmacharati, iti brahmachari. The one who is in the quest of ultimate reality is a brahmachari. So he learned the Shastras and went along in the first pilgrimage trying to learn and know about the ultimate reality. He did get his first call in the first pilgrimage itself. However, the second pilgrimage is when he took to the second ashrama, that is the Grihastha-ashrama. Then it was in his third pilgrimage that he actually established his sampradaya. Now, one very important stay of Vallabhacharya is when he stayed in Vraja, the Vraja Bhumi or Gokula. When he got his divine call to found his sampradaya or the Pushti Marga, he also had an experience of a very mystic feeling. Now, at the same time, Madhvacharya follower Madhavendra Yati, who had initially introduced him to Bhagavata Purana, was also at Gokula, and Sri Vallabhacharya was also staying at Gokula. At that point in time, an image of Sri Krishna lifting the Govardhana manifested out of a cave in Vrajabhumi. Now, this manifestation of Govardhan Nathji is known as Prakatya in the Vallabha Sampradaya. Now, it was Madhavendra Yati who actually came across this Prakatya. However, how much ever he would try to offer any offering to Lord Sri Krishna, he would not accept it. He then told Madhavendra Yati that I have manifested to accept offerings from Vallabha. Therefore, Vallabhacharya was then called over and he offered offerings to Sri Krishna, and then a small temple was built by Vallabhacharya in the Vrajabhumi. Now, this temple later on became a huge construction by a Vaishya, by a businessman called Purnamal. It was this same Govardhan Nathji who manifested himself at Vrajabhumi for Vallabhacharya was then later shifted to Nathdwara, which is now known as Srinathji and which is the most important place of worship for the Vallabha Sampradayis. Now, when Vallabhacharya was establishing his own Sampradaya, he called the relation between himself and God by the name Brahma Sambandha. Now, when we speak about establishment of a philosophy or establishment of a sampradaya, it basically revolves around one question: the relationship between Jiva, Jagat and Brahma. Jiva are the living entities or the Atmans that we all are. The Jagat, which is the world that we see around us, and Brahman, the ultimate reality. So essentially, every Acharya has interpreted or coded down, encoded their experience or their understanding, their learning of the ultimate reality and the relation of the Jiva and Jagat with the ultimate reality in the form of their Sampradaya and their philosophy. Now in Vallabhacharya's Sampradaya, this Sambandha between the Brahma and the Jiva or the Brahma and the Jagat is called as Brahma Sambandha. The first initiate into this Sampradaya was Damodara Dasa, and the mantra that was given as initiation was Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama, which is the mantra that you might have heard if when you logged in at before the lecture. Now, after his stay at Gokula, he took up a third pilgrimage. Okay, the first pilgrimage was Brahmacharya Ashrama. He was going in search of knowledge. Okay, fine. In the second pilgrimage, when he wanted to delve deeper into his understanding, he got a call to get married and get settled in the Grihastha Ashrama, which he did. But he did not stop there. He continued with a third pilgrimage. And what was the purpose of this third pilgrimage? Now the Sampradaya or the understanding has happened to Vallabhacharya. He has understood the ultimate reality. He has started initiating his followers into the Brahma Sambandha. What further? The Acharya then takes the third pilgrimage in order to spread knowledge about his Sampradaya and his understanding throughout the length and breadth of Bharata. Now, in the third pilgrimage, again, he revisited the places in central, western, eastern India, again, finally culminating in Banaras. However, the purpose now for the pilgrimage was to spread the knowledge of Pushti Marga. Now, how did he spread this knowledge of Pushti Marga? In two ways. One, by engaging in philosophical debates, and second, by initiating people into the Brahma Sambandha. Now, whenever an Acharya has an understanding of the Jiva Jagat Brahma relation and establishes his own philosophy, he always has to sit and discuss his understanding with the understanding of other schools in order to prove that his understanding is also in a way right. And it is a right path to reach the ultimate reality. Now, that was the purpose of engaging in philosophical debates, which was known as Vada. And the second way was to initiate the no voices. Now, for the Shastrarthis, you sit and do Vada and then explain to them how your philosophy or your understanding is correct. Now, how do you reach this understanding to common people? To common people, you give them initiation into a sampradaya, give them certain rituals and a routine to follow, give them an understanding in a simple way so that they may be elevated in their spiritual evolution. Now, one of the most important ways that he adopted in order to spread his knowledge and sampradaya was holding Bhagavata Saptahas. Now, you might all be familiar with Bhagavata Saptahas when the Bhagavata Purana, the entire Purana, or at least the Dashamaskanda, is read over a period of 7 days. Now, this practice was majorly started by Vallabhacharya. Though it also existed in the Madhva Sampradaya, Vallabhacharya was one who gave a lot of importance to Bhagavata Saptaha. He himself traveled to places and held received for his Sampradaya was in Gujarat. Why? Because Gujarat already had a poet or a realized soul by the name Narsi Mehta, who was before Vallabhacharya. So Narsi Mehta had already, through his musical composition, established Krishna Bhakti through his songs. Therefore, the people in Gujarat were already kind of into the devotional fold of Krishna. Therefore, when Vallabhacharya took his sampradaya to Gujarat, they were able to grasp his way of understanding his sampradaya and adapt to it. Similarly, during Vallabhacharya's son's time, there was Mirabai in Rajasthan. Therefore, it was Gujarat and Rajasthan where Vallabhacharya's sampradaya received greatest response. After finishing his third pilgrimage, he came down to Benares. In Benares also he stayed for a while propagating his knowledge. And after that he felt, now it is enough. I have spread how much ever I could. Now it is time for me to introspect and to write in order to preserve this knowledge for posterity. So he then took residence at Adel near Allahabad, where he spent his last 20 years with his family and a few very intimate disciples. He used to take tours to hold Bhagavata Saptahas, take part in some Vadas, etc. But however, he would come back to Adel to sit, contemplate, introspect, and write and record his sampradaya and his works for posterity. He is known to have written most of his philosophical as well as devotional works during this period of his life. Now, what are Vallabhacharya's writings? Madhurashtakam, we know, is one of his, which we are going to see in some time. But that is not the only work of the Acharya. He wrote the Bhashyas, like other Acharyas, on Brahma Sutra, a commentary on the Bhagavata Purana. Now, the commentary on Brahma Sutra is known as Anubhashya. However, this Anubhashya, he left it incomplete at, the third pada. The Brahma Sutras are divided into 4 major adhyayas, and he completed up to the third adhyaya and somehow left it there. And then he took to writing the commentary on the Bhagavata Purana, which is known as Subodhini. Now, when he was writing the commentary to the Bhagavata Purana, he wrote from 1st to 3rd skanda. When he finished the third skanda, it was when he was traveling in his 3rd pilgrimage from the Ganga Sagara towards Jagannatha Puri. He got the first call from God to give up his mortal coil. So when he got the first call, he stopped the commentary at the 3rd skanda and immediately took to writing the commentary on the 10th skanda. The 10th skanda contains the entire story of Lord Sri Krishna. How could Vallabhacharya have left his mortal coil without writing his understanding on the life of his Purushottama Krishna? Therefore, he stopped his commentary at the 3rd skanda and took up the commentary to the 10th skanda. He finished his commentary to the 10th skanda and moved to the 11th skanda when he received the second call. Now, he realized that his time to leave the mortal coil had come. However, there were some responsibilities that he felt towards his sampradayas and the devotees following his sampradaya, that he should write certain granthas for them to follow. So he wrote a bhashya on the Purva Mimamsa, which is the Karma Kanda. Then he wrote 16 books of varying lengths dealing with his philosophy, the code of conduct for the Pushti Margins, which are known collectively as the Shodasha Granthas. He also wrote a book called Tattvartha Deepa Nibandha, or essays illuminating the meaning of true knowledge. Tattvartha means the meaning of true knowledge. Nibandha, essays. Deepa, that which illuminates. So it is a guideline given by Vallabhacharya for people to understand the true meaning of highest reality. It also acts like a manual outlining the theology and way of life for the Pushti Margins. He also wrote 5 other books in Vrajabhasha, because all the commentaries and granthas that he was writing were in Samskrita. He then also wrote 5 other books in the language of the common man, or the language of Vrajabhumi, the Bhumi of Sri Krishna, the Vrajabhasha. He has also written various stotras and miscellaneous other short texts. So when he finally got the third call to give up his mortal coil, he invited Madhavendra Yati. Now, it is important to realize that in all this travel and understanding and writing and introspection that Sri Vallabhacharya did, he did not get formally initiated into sannyasa. He was first going in search of knowledge in his brahmacharya ashrama. Then he married, became a grihastha, established his sampradaya and spread knowledge about his sampradaya. He had a guru who taught him his shastra granthas, but he did not get initiated into sannyasa until he got the third call to leave the mortal coil. Now, when he has got the call to leave the mortal coil, he requested Madhavendra Yati, the one who had first introduced him to Bhagavata Purana, which is the essence of the life of Sri Krishna, and got himself initiated into sannyasa by the name Purnananda. He took the name Purnananda. He spent 1 week in a closed room in contemplation before he left Allahabad and went to Benares. He used to stay in Hanuman Ghat, where he observed Mauna Vrata. He did not speak to anybody. Everybody came to take his last darshan. And they all asked him, what is the last message that you want to give us? What is the message that you want us to follow? Now that last message is this. Yada bahirmukhaha yuyam bhavishyatha kathanchana. If at any point in time you all become more outwardly in life, that you get too attached to materialistic pleasures, tada kala pravahastha dehachittadayopyuta sarvatha bhakshayishyanti yushman iti me matihi. Then I understand at that point in time, when you become completely external, then your deha, chitta, etc., which are all controlled by time, will be devoured by time. And that is my understanding. Na laukikaha prabhu krishnaha manute naiva laukikam. However, Krishna is not laukika. He doesn't belong to this material world. Therefore, the people who are following Krishna should also not follow materialistic things. Krishna will not consider you if you follow materialistic things. Bhavaha tatra asmadiyam sarvaschaiva paralokaschaiva tenayam sarva bhavena sarvatha sevyaha. He should alone be propitiated, not just for pleasures in this world, but to attain the Paramaloka also. Because Gopishaha eva vidhasyati akhilam. Because it is Gopisha, the Ishvara of the Gopis, who actually takes care of everything in this world. Now, this is the essence of Vallabhacharya's teachings. And after giving this last message, he took Jala Samadhi in the Ganga river. Now, this message is extremely important because it gives you the various experiences of Vallabhacharya in a nutshell. Okay, when we see the teachings of Vallabhacharya, we will see the reflection of this message. Now, when you think of Vallabhacharya and his Sampradaya, there are certain words that you will always hear. Pushti Marga, grace of God, Brahma Sambandha, Seva Bhava, Gopi Bhava, Dasya Bhava, Vatsalya Bhakti, Leela, and Shuddhadvaita. These are the essence of Vallabha's teaching. Now, the key points of Vallabhacharya's teaching. According to him, he was a Vaishnava Bhakti Acharya. So I have repeated time and again that Sri Purushottama Krishna was ultimate reality for him. And what was the nature of Sri Purushottama Krishna? He was Sat Chit Ananda. Okay. And the world that you see around you is nothing but the Lord's playful manifestation, Leela. It is his play, it is his sport. However, the Jiva, when it takes birth, which is also a part of Purushottama Krishna, the Jiva and the Jagat, both are manifestations of Purushottama Krishna. But what happens is, when the Jiva takes birth, it has a lot of desires and attachments. Now, because of these desires and attachments, it gains what we call as Kartrubhava and Bhoktrubhava. So instead of seeing that this whole world is a play of Lord Shri Krishna, that everything around me belongs to Lord Shri Krishna, the Jiva begins to think that I am doing this, I am doing that, Kartrubhava. I am enjoying happiness, I am suffering, I am feeling sad, Bhoktrubhava. Now, because of this Kartru Bhoktrubhava, he sees the Leela of God as samsara. Therefore, the samsara is nothing but a situation of entanglement that the Jiva has put himself into because of desires and attachments. Therefore, for Vallabhacharya, mukti is nothing but to get released from this flawed perception of samsara, to perceive the samsara as Bhagavat Leela. And how will you attain that? You will attain it when you have complete surrender. Surrender everything to the Lord, he says. Samasta Vishaya Tyaga is extremely important in the Vallabha Sampradaya. What do you mean by Samasta Vishaya Tyaga? Giving up everything that you think belongs to you. That does not mean only material pleasures like money, home, etc. It also means the body that you are in, the relationship that you have of mother, father, wife, brother, sister, friend. All these things are binding you, and they are all Vishayas which you have to offer to Lord Shri Krishna and develop Dasya Bhava. Because the Brahma Sambandha mantra, or the mantra which initiates a Vallabhacharya Sampradaya or a Pushti Margin into the Sampradaya, this is what is the essence of it. It says, I, whose Ananda nature has been suppressed by the misery arising from separation from Krishna for ages, now dedicate to Bhagavan Krishna my body, senses, vital breath and mind together with their functions, also my wife, house, children, possession, wealth and hopes. You aren't even supposed to have hope of gaining or losing something. And along with myself, I offer it to Shri Krishna. O Shri Krishna, Dasoham Tava. I am your servant. Now the Jiva, who was once upon a time a part of Satchit Ananda, has lost the feeling of Ananda because of getting entangled into the samsara. Therefore, he becomes extremely sad, being separated from the Satchit Ananda, and therefore offers everything to Shri Krishna and says that let me now be your servant and see the world, the Jagat, not as samsara but as your Leela, and again have a chance to experience Satchit Ananda. Therefore, Vallabhacharya's teaching begins with Atma Nivedana. You know that the Bhagavata Purana talks about Navavida Bhakti. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnoho Smaranam Padasevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakhyam Atma Nivedanam. So in the 9 forms of Bhakti, it is like a step-by-step culmination, and then the Atma Nivedanam says complete surrender to Lord Shri Krishna. However, in Vallabhacharya's Sampradaya, he begins with Atma Nivedana. And after beginning with Atma Nivedana, he says, only then will your Shravanam, Kirtanam, Padasevanam, all of it will have meaning. Because all of it will then be done with Seva Bhava or Dasya Bhava. But he also realizes the fact that all of us are in different stages of spiritual evolvement. Therefore, he identifies 3 types of jivas: Pravahi Jiva, Maryada Jiva, and Pushti Jiva. Pravahi Jivas are those who are eternally going round and round in the cycle of birth and death, being entangled in the samsara without realizing Bhagavat Leela. Now if they are adnyas, if they are ignorant, with satsangati, along with good company, they may at some point of time evolve to gain the grace of God. However, if they are dushtas, they are eternally pushed into the tama or great darkness. Now the other type of jiva he talks about are Maryada Jivas. Now Maryada Jivas are living in complete discipline, following the scriptures, doing all the routines. However, they believe in their actions being able to help them evolve in their spiritual development. Therefore, the most probable state that they may attain is that of Akshara Purusha. Now, Akshara Purusha is also a manifestation of Purushottama Shri Krishna. However, he is not the ultimate reality. Now, this Akshara Purusha, he equates with Shankaracharya's Nirguna Brahma. He says all the Maryada Margins who are very diligently performing the rituals and the routines, or those who, like in Shankaracharya's philosophy, are Jnana Margins, are completely engrossed in knowledge. They do reach Mukti, but they reach to the level of Akshara Purusha. They do not reach Purushottama Krishna. Why? Because they believe that their actions are helping them in their spiritual evolvement. From Maryada Margins, he then speaks about a class of jivas called as Pushti Jivas. Now the word Pushti comes from the root word Pusha, which means to nourish. What kind of nourishment? Nourishment of food, nourishment of wealth? No. The Bhagavata Purana says, Poshanam tad anugraham. Nourishment is that of his grace. Therefore, Pushti Jivas are Jivas who are nourished by the grace of God. Therefore, his Marga, his Sampradaya, which advocates the utmost importance to grace of God, is known as Pushti Marga. He says there is no condition for this grace. If you do such and such thing, you will gain the grace of Lord. There is no such conditions. Like the Kathopanishad says, Yamevaisha vrunute tena labhyaha. The one who is chosen by God attains his grace. Therefore, the devotee performs his seva in complete renunciation of any kind of return, expectation of any kind of return. He says the devotee does not question the Lord's choice. It is possible that we are completely devoted to the Lord, but we cannot see any visible results. But somebody who may not be doing the rituals, who may not be doing bhajana, seva, seems to get Lord's grace. And then we are bewildered, saying, how is it possible that I am not a patra, I am not eligible for your grace and somebody else is? This question itself, Vallabhacharya says, is not pertinent. The minute you have a thought about the fruit, or the minute you expect the Lord to endow you with his grace, you are not following the marga of Pushti. Therefore, to Vallabhacharya, devotion is both the means and end. We do not do bhakti or practice bhakti marga in order to reach the Lord. We practice bhakti marga in order to gain the bhakti of Lord. Because he says the ultimate loka that you gain in the Pushti marga is that of Goloka. And there also you attain the Goloka to do seva to the Lord and not to become one with him. And such kind of unconditional love, unconditional surrender to the Lord can happen in only one kind of emotion, and that is Vatsalya Sakti. The love that a mother has for a child is the most unconditional love. And therefore, he preaches Vatsalya Sakti as the main emotion to have when you are a devotee of Lord Shri Krishna. And therefore, the image of Lord Shri Krishna that people in the Vallabhacharya Sampradaya do puja to every day is a Bala Gopala or a child Krishna. They believe that the jiva exists only to serve the Lord, and this service is without any motive, and that is the seva bhava that he is talking about. Therefore, the devotee begins with Atma Nivedana, making every other form like Shravana, Kirtana, Smarana, Pada Sevana, etc. as a spontaneous expression of love and bhakti towards the service of Lord with the feeling of Dasoham. Now this seva, he also understands that everybody need not or cannot start with Atma Nivedana. They need some starting point. So he says, just like there are 3 types of jivas, your seva can also take 3 forms: Kayika, Vittaja and Manasa. Now, Kayika is the service to the Lord that you do physically, like waking him up, giving him a bath, dressing him up, decorating him with good flowers, with chandana, making food for him, offering food to him, keeping him in the swing and singing for him, then making him go to sleep at night. It can also be Vittaja. In order to do complete seva to Lord, you also need to have some money to buy your fruits and flowers, etc. He said, if you cannot do anything else, at least contribute towards the seva of your Lord to begin with Vittaja, with Vittam or wealth, and Manasa, which is mental. Now, Manasa Seva is nothing but the cultivation of Dasyatva and Seva Bhava to an extent as to transcend even the aspiration for moksha. Okay. Now, he says that your Kaika and Vittaja Seva will never be complete if it is not Manasiga. Just because I am giving you 3 forms of Seva, he says, doesn't mean you can do Kaika Seva and leave it. You can do Vittaja Seva and leave it. No, it is to help you begin your journey. But unless and until you do it with Manasiga Bhakti, that will never attain the ultimate level. And the ultimate level is reached when you don't even aspire for moksha. Because moksha is what is the ultimate aspiration of every jnana margi, of every bhakta at some point in time. He says that when you are blessed with the grace of the Lord, then you attain Goloka. When you attain Goloka, you attain a body which is Bhagavat Sevopayogi. Therefore, you attain Sarupya Mukti. When you are with him in the Goloka, you attain Salokya Mukti. Then, when you take part in the Leela of the God, when you do your actions as Leela of the God, then you are attaining Salokya Samipya Mukti. Therefore, he says Sayujya or complete, merging into the Brahman is something that is inferior to attaining bhakti itself as a fruit. Now, he also talks about the Shuddha Pushti Jivas, who don't live for themselves but only for Krishna. And the best example he gives is that of the gopis of Vrindavan, because they didn't have any realization of the self, but they lived only for Shri Krishna. And he says there will come a time when your devotion will mature to such an extent that you cannot live without Krishna. Tat vinas thatum ashaktihi. It is impossible to remain without him. When you have such an intense pang of separation from Lord, that he considers is an appropriate time to take sannyasa and then gain full absorption into Sri Krishna. Therefore, in his own life, Vallabhacharya took sannyasa only towards the end of his life. He also says that just because you have an intense pang of separation and you take sannyasa, doesn't mean that that intense pang of separation is something that is not to be experienced or is inferior. He says that is the most superior form of bhakti. He says even when you attain Lord, there is always a room for viyoga and samyoga. You will keep coming and going back into the world. Therefore, when you attain him, you are with him. But when you are in this intense pang of separation, you are continuously having the thought of Lord Shri Krishna, which is much more superior than being there with him. So therefore, he says that the jiva's state of being in a constant desire for Lord itself is a beautiful experience. He says the bliss is not in becoming the sugar, it is in eating the sugar. Therefore, the Maryada jivas will reach the Akshara Brahma and become one with him. They have become sugar. But the Pushti Margis, or the followers of the Vallabha Sampradaya, attain Sevopayogi Deha, a spiritual body entitled to the service of Lord, which gives them Sarupya Mukti. They reach the Goloka and attain Salokya Mukti, and they also attain a Lilopayogi Deha and an opportunity to take part in the Leela of the Lord. Now, what do you mean by Lilopayogi Deha and a chance to take part in the Leela of the Lord? It is said that the entire Vraja Bhumi, the Gopalas, the Gopikas, all of them were Pushti Jivas who had attained the Lilopayogi Deha, and they came down with the Lord to take part in his Leela. Now that is the Samipya Mukti that Sri Vallabhacharya is talking about. And he says that this kind of bhakti is Anugrahika Sadhyaha. It is only possible by pure grace of the Lord. And in order that you gain the grace of Lord, you do nothing but do complete surrender to him in Dasya Bhava and do his seva without expecting him to do anything in return. That day, when you have that complete surrender without any expectations from the Lord, is when you will finally be graced with mukti. Now, this whole explanation of Vallabhacharya's life and his thoughts, teachings, and sampradaya is for the simple reason that we are going to see the Madhurashtakam in the light of his teachings, the teachings of the Pushti Marga, the teachings of the grace of God, the teachings of the Brahma Sambandha, the Seva Bhava, Gopi Bhava, Dasya Bhava, and most importantly, Vatsalya Sakti, which is reflected in the Madhurashtakam. Therefore, the Madhurashtakam, which was a spontaneous outpouring of Sri Vallabhacharya when he was experiencing Lord Krishna, will obviously have a reflection of the entire teachings and learnings and understandings of his life. It is said that one day Sri Vallabhacharya was sitting in contemplation and he was writing and thinking about, I have understood the philosophy, I have understood the sampradaya, I am initiating people, but will all this be fruitful? Where is this all leading? At that point, when he was in contemplation while writing his granthas, is when in the sampradaya it is said that Srinath ji appeared in front of him, and having the sakshatkara of Srinath ji, Sri Vallabhacharya then spoke the Madhurashtakam. With this background, we will begin with the Madhurashtakam. Now, we will begin with the name itself, Madhurashtakam. Ashtakam, meaning it has 8 verses. Now, people may ask, why 8 verses? Is there a definite answer? No. But can we kind of contemplate and understand why it might have been so? That we can. We never knew why Vallabhacharya chose to write only 8 verses. Why not less? Why not more? He gave his final message in just 3.5 verses. However, the Madhurashtakam runs in 8 verses. So why did he not choose to write something short, or why did he not choose to write longer? One understanding that we may think of in this direction is the Moola mantra of his sampradaya, which is Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama. Shri Krishna Sharanam Ma. So it is an Ashtakshara mantram. And coincidentally, the Madhurashtakam also has 8 verses. You might have seen that the other Vaishnava stotras, like say Jagannathashtakam, Pandurangashtakam, Krishnashtakam, they are all Ashtakams. Another reason that we can think of is the other Moola mantra, Om Namo Narayanaya. Om Namo Narayanaya. Again, Ashtakshara mantram. Now, a very simple explanation is that just like how Anushtubh Chanda was the most popular meter used for shlokas, like Vakratunda is Anushtubh, Namaste Sharade Devi is Anushtubh Chanda. So it's a common meter. The Ramayana is Anushtubh. It is said that the Adi Kavi began writing the Ramayana in the Anushtubh Chanda. Similarly, Ashtaka was a popular form of stotra literature. Now, when you see stotras, you will find a lot of Ashtakam. So one simple explanation is it is an Ashtakam because it was the most popular form of writing in the stotra literature. However, if we want to delve a little deeper and try and understand why maybe Vallabhacharya or the other Vaishnava Acharyas would have chosen the Ashtaka form, one explanation that we can give ourselves is that, is it probably because the Vaishnava mantras, be it Sri Krishna Sharanam Mama or Om Namo Narayanaya, are both Ashtakshara mantras. Now this thought came to me also because if you see the Shaiva stotra, one example, I have not found many of them, but one example you will find in Panchakam, that is the Shiva Panchakshara stotram. And if you count Nama Shivaya, it is 5. So similarly, the Panchakshara mantram Namah Shivaya is explained through the Shiva Panchakshara mantram. On those lines, we may explain to ourselves that probably the Ashtakshara mantram in the Vaishnava Sampradaya may have kind of encouraged all the Acharyas to write their stotras in the Ashtakam format. We will quickly, I know that there is going to be a question answer session also. So I will quickly finish the introduction to the refrain, and then we will take question answers for today. Now, in the Madhurashtakam, there is one pada or one refrain that repeats at the end of every verse. Now that refrain is Madhuradhipate Rakhilam Madhuram. Now every verse generally has 4 padas or 4 quarters. Now the 4th pada of every verse in the Madhurashtakam reads as Madhuradhipate Rakhilam Madhuram, which is Madhuradhipatehe Akhilam Madhuram. Madhuram nama, it is sweet. Now what is sweet? Akhilam Madhuram. Everything is sweet. Everything meaning what? Madhuradhipatehe Akhilam Madhuram. Everything that belongs to Madhuradhipati is sweet. Now, the word Madhuram comes from the word Madhu. Madhu or nectar. Now, in this material world, Madhu is considered the most naturally sweet thing available in nature. Okay, therefore the word for sweetness comes from the word Madhu. And how is Krishna described as Madhuradhipati, or the embodiment of sweetness? Okay, now this embodiment of sweetness, everything related to him is sweet. Now what do you mean by Akhilam? Akhilam nama Bhagavat Rupam. It could refer to his form. His form is beautiful. It could also refer to his Leela. Whatever Leela that he has done is beautiful. Because the Leela or the Jagat is nothing but his own manifestation. It is the Satchit Ananda form of the Lord when manifests itself only with the Sat component, without the Chit and the Ananda. Obviously, the material life does not have consciousness and does not have, obviously, because it does not have consciousness, it does not have Ananda. So it is the Sat aspect of Bhagavan. Therefore, everything in this world, be it his Rupa, Swarupa, Leela, or the Jagat, is all Madhura, because he is Madhuradhipati. He is the embodiment of sweetness. The nectar, which is the most sweet, is ultimately a Sat. It is something that exists in this world. And if this entire world is his manifestation, and he is the embodiment of sweetness, everything in this world, whether material or no, is sweet. So that is the meaning of Madhuradhipatehe Akhilam Madhuram. Okay, should we now take up the questions?
Ram, yes.
Hi Ram. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kanaka.
Thank you, Bhaiya. Thank you.
So we have this, we have collated the questions which has come up. Okay. The first question is Dasa Bhava and Vatsalya Bhava the same? Isn't
Okay.
Gopi Bhava also Madhura Bhakti?
Yes. Okay. It's a beautiful question. Okay. Now, can you just repeat the first half? I'll just go by bit. There are quite a few things.
Is Dasa Bhava and Vatsalya Bhava the same?
Yes. Now here, Vallabhacharya explains, does not mean, Dasa colloquially means a servant. Okay. Though you are doing seva to the Lord, ultimately you are also having his amsha. And he is not subordinating. He doesn't say that Dasya Bhava means being subordinate. He says Dasya Bhava means expression of love, and that love can be of any form. It can be that of Gopi Bhava or Madhura Bhakti, or it can be that of Vatsalya Bhava. Finally, when you're expressing love, you can fondle a child like a mother, or look to the Lord as your ultimate, love of life. What is the second half of the, does that answer the question?
I feel yes, because I have not yet received any comment onto the answer. Okay,
Okay.
the second
Okay.
question is, isn't Gopi Bhava Madhura Bhakti? At the same time, there is a connected question which has come up. What
Mhm.
is Madhura Bhakti?
Okay. Now, yes, Gopi Bhava is Madhura Bhakti. Now, one thing that I did not mention during, speaking, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Vallabhacharya were contemporaries. Now, Gopi Bhava is Madhura Bhakti and was advocated primarily by the Achintya Bheda Bhed school or the school of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, wherein Madhura Bhakti is when you see the Lord as the only Purusha. Okay, so we are all so developing the Stri Bhava and looking up to the Lord as your beloved is Madhura Bhakti. Now, Vallabhacharya says that Madhura Bhakti is something only very highly evolved soul or a highly evolved Atman can actually practice. You in fact need a very specific grace of God in order to be even able to understand Madhura Bhakti. He says it is not everybody's cup of tea to practice Madhura Bhakti. He does not negate Madhura Bhakti. He does advocate Madhura Bhakti or Gopi Bhava to be specific, not Madhura Bhakti per se, but he does advocate Gopi Bhava, but he says that that is to very select few people who have attained the stage of Shuddha Pushti Jiva, who have been specially blessed by Lord, who will be able to understand the true meaning of Gopi Bhava or Madhura Bhakti, because if you do not have that level of spiritual evolvement, then you may very easily be misled in the understanding of Madhura Bhakti. Therefore, to his common followers, he, yes, Gauri Didi, I think, has said, but you said Gopi Bhava is also Dasa Bhakti. Does it mean that when you are expressing your love to the Lord, you cannot have Dasya Bhakti? It is not so. Because for Vallabhacharya, Dasya means expression of love. And as I said, Dasya Bhakti does not mean looking up to the Lord as your master and you being his servant. Dasya Bhakti means that you have completely surrendered to his will and you are doing all the actions as his will and not by your own personal will. So Dasya Bhava can exist when you are looking up to the Lord as your beloved. So Krishna is my beloved, but I am doing service to him. And when I'm doing service to him, I have the bhava that the service that I'm doing is because he wants me to do that service to him. But the relation, the personal relation that I have with God is that of a beloved has with another beloved. That is for Gopi Bhava. Did I answer all the dimensions of that question? I'm sorry,
I feel yes. So we'll move on to the next question because, taking into consideration the limitation of the times also. The
sorry,
next
yeah.
question is, what is the difference between Vaikuntha and Goloka?
Okay. So now Vaikuntha is a dhama, the dhama of Lord Sri Krishna, as is accepted by the Ramanuja Sampradaya and by the Madhura Bhakti, the Chaitanya Sampradaya. And Goloka is a terminology used for the abode of Lord in the Vallabha Sampradaya. The basic difference being that in Goloka, it is actually like probably a replication of the Vraja Bhumi and his Leelas in Gokula and Mathura, etc. So he says that when you reach Goloka, you will be with Krishna, the Gopis, the Gopalas, and you will be taking part in his Leelas. That is the point of Goloka, whereas Vaikuntha is the dhama of Mahavishnu or Krishna. That is not a replica of Gokula per se.
So the next question is, what is the view of Vallabhacharya on Shaivism and Shaktas?
So in my limited readings, I can say that, as I told you, he has limited the Shaivas. Especially when you say Shaivas, we generally speak about the Shankara philosophy. So he says Shankara philosophy people are like Maryada Jivas. They are within the rules and regulations of the Shastras, and they are doing their rituals or they are following Jnana Marga. So they will attain Akshara Brahma. They will become one with Brahma, but that is not the ultimate Ananda for Vallabhacharya. He says you have to go one step further. So for him, Goloka attainment or Pushti Marga is one step ahead of Maryada Marga. He doesn't negate the Maryada Marga of the Shaktas or the Shankaracharyas. He says that you have to go one step beyond, and Pushti is that step.
So we have got this question again. If you can explain Madhura Bhakti again.
Okay, now Madhura Bhakti is an extension of the Gopi Bhava, in the sense that there is only one Purusha, there is only one Lord, and that is Shri Krishna, and all the others who are Jivas are his beloved, the ones who look at him as his beloved, developing a Stri Bhava, that not having the sense of I am, the Karta or Bhokta or anything, but saying that I am the Lord is my beloved. I think that's the best way to put it, in the sense that you are Stri and he is your Purusha. That is a very, that's a very, what do you call, very limited explanation for Madhura Bhakti.
So the next question is, what are Acharya's views on Vishishtadvaita?
Vishishtadvaitam, I haven't
request, there is a small request, if you can focus on Vishishtadvaita so that others can also understand what is Vishishtadvaita before you answer it.
Okay. First of all, Vishishtadvaita is the philosophy of Ramanujacharya. Okay, and he also believes that Vishishtam Advaitam, so the Purushottama, who is Mahavishnu, is Vishishta. He has certain qualities. He is Sarva Gunopa Samhara. There is Sarva Gunopa Samhara in him. He is the collection of all the good qualities that exist. Okay, that is the understanding of the Vishishtadvaita in the Ramanuja Sampradaya. And in my readings, I haven't come across any specific commentary of Sri Vallabhacharya on the Vishishtadvaita school. If I do, maybe I can clarify it tomorrow. But until today, I haven't come across any specific commentary of Vallabhacharya on the Vishishtadvaita school.
Thank you so much, Kanaka. I'm sure like all the questions were answered, and in case like any elaboration required, you can actually put up your questions into the WhatsApp group. We will take it up tomorrow. Okay. There is a small announcement also which we want to make, which we will be doing it as soon as the program gets ended with the Bhagwan's prayers. And also, like, we have 15 minutes Sai Gayatri Mantra, which is happening every day for the world peace and world health. So after the program gets over, if anybody is free, you are most welcome to join us for the same. Like, we'll be continuing this session till 9:15. Pairam, I request the moderators to please help us with the prayers and the announcements.
Om साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्। ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्। ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्।
ॐ तत्सत् श्रीनारायण तु पुरुषोत्तम गुरुदूत सिद्धबुद्ध तु स्कन्दविनायक सरिता पावक तु सविता पावक तु ब्रह्ममस्तु यशक्ति तु येषु पिता प्रभुतु रुद्रविष्णु तु रामकृष्ण तु रहीमतावतु रहीमतावतु वासुदेव गोविष्णुकतु चिदानन्द हरितु अद्वितीय तु अकालनिर्भय आत्मलिङ्ग शिव तु आत्मलिङ्ग शिव तु आत्मलिङ्ग शिव तु।
समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु। समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु। समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। जय बोलो भगवान श्री सत्य साई बाबा जी की